Okay, so we're live on Facebook now too, which is great. So that is, so again, Clark Wash and Essence Conditioner, and then Illuminance Cleanser, or if that's not available, ID Cleanser, actually also 1635 or Everything. And then when it comes to toners, this is interesting. So Illuminance Toner is what we normally recommend, and Illuminance Cream. This is my Illuminance Cream, which is also really banged up because I use it now, over here in particular. But what's interesting that a lot of people don't know is that it has salicylic acid. And the thing about salicylic acid is it penetrates the skin's oiliest areas best. So what sometimes we'll do is we'll suggest do ID Toner, then Illuminance Toner, and then ID Lotion, then Illuminance Cream, because then it helps the Illuminance penetrate to areas it normally wouldn't, being mostly alpha hydroxy acids. And then importantly is sunscreen. Sun and light protection every single day, including indoors. If you saw our IG or our live stream, which is now on IGTV, on sunscreens indoors, we really go into it there. But basically, yeah, a lot of UVA goes through windshields, windows, but also visible light from your tablet, your laptop, your phone. All of that causes hyperpigmentation, as does heat, like from where you're cooking. So I use Armada Post Procedure, which is pretty thick, particularly on these areas, and specifically for indoor and outdoor light. There's a bunch of stuff going on online now. 1635 is actually on sale, and ID products are on sale, and mascara even is, I think, it's like 50% off or something. So check that out on vmvhypoallergenics.com and .ph in the Philippines. And there, the pigmentations, if they're still really, really stubborn, definitely go see a dermatologist, because you want them to look at patterns of the pigmentation on your face and your body to try to figure out what might be causing that. Also, a dermatologist you're seeing, especially if you see someone who's an expert in contact dermatitis, might ask for a photo patch test to determine what it is you might be allergic to. We've had cases of people, for example, who love to garden, and the gardening, the exposure to the plants, caused a lot of the pigmentation problems. And remember, you can private message us the results of your patch tests, and we can customize recommendations for you based on your particular allergens, even cross-reactants to those allergens. So there. So based on that, I'm going to bring in our resource expert. Mom, you will join us?
I will make way for her.
Thank you, my love. Thanks for all your help. I appreciate it.
No problem.
After a bit of a chaotic start, I apologize. Hold on. Let me make free to pass.
Hello. What a treat. What a treat.
Hi.
Oops.
Yeah, you need to move forward a bit. So here, Mom, you need to make sure that you're in the
I'm
thing.
looking there.
Well, make sure you're in the thing.
Ah, I see. Okay. But where's the camera that I should be looking?
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway,
Hello.
hi.
I'm going to go. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye, sweetheart.
Bye-bye.
So I'll get very quickly to Minutay 91, who's like my best friend this morning. What is it about insect bites, such as ant or mosquito bites, that causes pigmentation? When I was younger, I didn't have the issue, but now ant bites cause dark spots that take forever to fade.
Right. Well, any kind of inflammation, especially if you have brownish skin, and I don't mean that you have to really be brown. It can be even white skin, but there's a little bit of brown to it. There are melanocytes, there are melanosomes in your epidermis, and then what happens is some of that pigment that they produce with inflammation falls into the second layer of the skin, because that's where the big inflammatory change occurs in an insect bite. The insect goes in with its proboscis, and therefore the inflammation is inside the inner part. And because of that, you get what is called post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. As you grow older, this may become a little bit more prominent. And the reason for that is, as you grow older, there is more pigment that is deposited there. There's more inflammation. There's more telangiectasia and dilated vessels.
Did you catch that? Can anyone spell that? If we have any doctors listening. Please spell that out in the comments.
Yeah.
So does that answer the question, sort of? A lot of hyperpigmentation, we'll get into that more generally now. I just wanted to make sure I got a question out there. Comes from inflammation first, right? And then an overproduction of melanin,
Right.
which apparently seems to increase as we get older. So
Right.
backing up just a little bit, Dr. Viralia Rowell, phenomenal brain, multi-published, etc. Something that some of you may or may not know. She kind of wrote the book a lot on sunscreens and brown skin, particularly indoor light and pigmentation concerns. So this is sort of a topic that's very, very close to her heart. So maybe we start off, Mom, by talking about what is it we're talking about? What are the common pigmentation problems that we see and what causes them?
Right. In people with a little bit of brown skin to a very marked brown skin, even to black skin, what happens is there's so much melanin there so that when there's inflammation, the melanin is produced more. Now, that's called post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. As I grow older, I realize really that even melasma is inflammation. And the reason for that is as more studies are being done on melasma, we realize that it's really not just the pigment on the surface of the skin, but there are dilated vessels. There are what we call solar elastosis. That means the elastic fiber becomes kind of destroyed because of inflammation. So there is an inflammatory consideration in any kind really of pigmentation on the skin, whether it's from insect bites or whether it's from acne.
What about melasma? You said it also
Melasma.
comes from inflammation.
Yes.
Why? From radiation exposure?
Right. When you read up about melasma, most people will say that there are three important factors in melasma. One is the genetics, so that if your family is prone to it, you will probably get it more likely. And then the other one besides genetics are hormones, if you're taking birth control pills. And very often with pregnancy is usually when they start in women in particular, although men also get melasma. But the important thing is that as we study the molecules and the genes that are involved in the genesis of melasma, we realize that there are really factors there that are stimulated or regulated. And this produces inflammation of the skin. The different kinds of inflammation, of course, my daughter mentioned to you about the fact that in this day and age of COVID, where there's so much chlorine being used by us, because of our scare about, droplets getting on surfaces and things like that. There's so much use of chlorinated hydrocarbons in the air that gets into the air. So that is a photosensitizer, and it's also an irritant.
Okay. So again, a lot of hyperpigmentation concerns start off as an inflammation, correct? Inflammation's basically the problem for everything.
Yeah.
It's really linked to so many problems. So can we maybe turn off the volume? So anything anti-inflammatory is kind of your friend, okay? Just be careful because a lot of anti-inflammatories out there do also have allergens, which can be inflammatory because they stress the skin, right? But so hyperpigmentation is an inflammation also.
Let me just clarify that
Okay.
a little bit more. In that melasma, for a long time, we just really sectioned it off as something different because it's a very slow-growing discoloration on the face without any preceding redness
right,
or itching or scratching or whatever. It just appears, and slowly over the years, you notice, what is this thing that doesn't want to go away, right? That's melasma. So we thought there
And
was...
it can grow.
Right. And so we felt that there was really not much inflammation there at all. Well, in more recent years, it's now being shown that that inflammation can be from allergy to chemicals in the air that don't produce a real photoreaction, like we do when you go out in the sun. But slowly over time, it produces an inflammation within the skin that then eventually produces that very subtle and very non-inflammatory, it seems, discoloration of the skin.
Okay.
This is different from post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, the
Hyperpigmentation.
best example being the question earlier about
Insect
why
bites.
insect bites. So whether you've scratched yourself or you bruised yourself
Or you have
or
a,
you
yeah,
fell,
there's like a
yeah,
wound or
there's a
something.
bit of a wound,
Or acne.
yes, or acne, they tend to hyperpigment as you grow older, simply because there are aging changes in the skin. I'd love to talk a little bit about aging because it's so related to
Man,
pigmentation.
we only have an
Later.
hour. Then you have calls and research, and then people get annoyed at me for keeping you away.
Okay.
So we will concentrate on hyperpigmentation, but we will do another live stream on aging in the skin. A lot of this is interrelated anyway, but as you'll see, there's so much to delve into. Someone here is asking, is hyperpigmentation treated the same even though they have different causes?
First, you have to identify the cause. You talked about melasma. It's clear-cut melasma, subtle, gradually appearing. There's no inflammation there. That's obvious. We only see it when we do biopsies, when we do molecular and genetic studies of that particular skin. So for melasma, there are, for me, well, let me go into what has now been identified as a possible source for that inflammation of melasma, and that is visible light. Many people who have brown skin don't like to go out in the sun because by culture they kind of like to look the color that they were born with and not the discoloration or the hyperpigmentation that occurs when they're out in the sun because they're having more pigment and so therefore
It's also hot.
they tan. Yeah,
It's also
they tan
hot.
quicker and it's also hot. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, those in melasma, there's no obvious cause for it, like in post-inflammatory, post-inflammation hyperpigmentation, bites, etc. But melasma is now more and more, we've shown in studies that not just UV, which is outdoor sun, but even UVA, which is also outdoor sun,
And
but
visible
is
light.
also indoors.
Right. So how do we treat, let's say, melasma versus versus post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation?
Right. Take care of the cause of the inflammation, but if it's already finished, then you don't have to worry. It's just the pigmentation you're going to be treating. The treatments for post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation are basically very similar to what we treat melasma with, and that is with various bleaching agents, the traditional being hydroquinone, which is banned in many countries, beyond 2%.
Be careful with hydroquinone.
And because it can produce, for people who become so, immersed with it, it can produce its own hyperpigmentation problem called ochronosis.
Yeah.
So it should be used for a short period of time, especially if you're using what's called the Kligman formula, which is a combination of the hydroquinone with the retinoic acid, the retinoic acid being to disrupt the barrier a little bit so the hydroquinone penetrates better, and the steroid, the third element in that formula, is to bring down the inflammation. So it's a balancing act.
Okay. If I can jump in very quickly. So in essence, if I understood correctly, a lot of hyperpigmentation concerns can be treated more or less in the same way. Most of it starts really with identifying what the trigger is. Because if you're constantly still exposed to the trigger, be it sun, visible light,
Infrared
plants, infrared heat, photoallergens, it'll just keep coming. And one thing about hyperpigmentation is it's really known for being extremely stubborn. So that's definitely something to think about. Then we talked about prevention, and I mentioned earlier about photoallergens, which maybe we can get into a bit later. The less of them you use, the better. And a lot of the topical products made to treat melasma and hyperpigmentation, if you look at the ingredients, they have dyes, certain botanicals, or fragrance, preservatives, all of which are photoallergens. So as you're using this product that's supposed to be treating your hyperpigmentation, you kind of might also be encouraging that it stays more stubborn or even the formation of new lesions, right? And then there are treatments like hydroquinone. You have to be a little careful. And steroids, you also have to be a little careful. These things aren't for forever use and mega use because they can cause other problems. So the products I mentioned earlier is our answer to that. And what we've seen is So much can be achieved, as usual, what we always say, if you can just get rid of the trigger and prevent. And if you need a photo patch test, that can also be life-changing for very stubborn melasma. So there, did I sort of encapsulate
You
that?
did. You
Okay.
encapsulated it right well.
All
I'd
right.
just like to add that for melasma, as we mentioned, the sun and indoor lights, that includes visible light and even infrared, which we will talk about more when we go into aging. Those produce inflammation, some minor, but consistently because you're exposed to it on a daily basis from the indoor lights that we have, for instance. So, in the indoor lights, by the way, the LED lights are good, but you should choose more the yellow rather than the blue, the
Right.
white,
That's
the
very
blue.
true. Okay. Let me just get in a few questions very quickly.
Okay.
What sunscreen would we recommend for really photosensitive skin? Face and Body Shield 60 or Armada Sport 70. Actually, I would recommend, if it's photosensitivity or possible allergy, I'd recommend the Armada Post Procedure or Baby, because they're both purely mineral, inorganic sunscreens. That's what my son does, and he is, as I mentioned earlier, for those in the pre-live, very, very photosensitive. Armada Face and Body Shield 30 and 45 are great for indoor and outdoor use, but if you have a real photo allergy, I would suggest the inorganic ones, Armada Post Procedure or Baby. We have another question. Janet Tinkari, can I purchase Armada in the U.S.? Not at the moment, unfortunately. What's happening is a lot of FDAs around the world are fairly consistent about regulations for sunscreens. The U.S. is special and has a different monograph. It's considered a drug in the United States. And also the monograph isn't quite final. So we're a small enough company that we can't quite produce one formula for one country and another for the rest. So right now, Armada unfortunately isn't available in the U.S. If you have someone traveling elsewhere, although travel isn't such a big thing now, that's sort of the only way you can get it. Okay.
Along those lines of the sunscreens, you look out for ingredients.
Yeah.
Always look at labels of your sunscreens. Just because it's a sunscreen with the number 120, 130, 150 doesn't mean anything at all.
That's right.
That only refers to UVB protection. When it says SPF, that's sun protection factor for UVB. It doesn't, you have to look for something like that says UVA PF. That's UVA protection factor
Yeah.
to the UVA, which produces even more hyperpigmentation because
Yeah.
the UVB just makes you burn when you're outdoor. But the UVA is more insidious because it has longer wavelengths and is
it's
able
deeper.
to penetrate deeper into the skin and produce inflammation there.
Yeah.
That is
And
very
that visible
subtle.
light,
Right,
And now
right.
in COVID and quarantine and stuff, the amount of time we working at home or on our tablets and stuff, you gotta wear the sunscreen. Jazz Living in Faith is saying Armada broad spectrum is pretty thick. It is. This is the inorganic ones, no? The post procedure and Baby are thick, and they're meant to be because they double as barrier protection. If you were able to catch our live stream on contact dermatitis, or really a lot of other things, she talks so much about the importance of protecting the barrier layer of the skin. So those creams are also barrier protections. But sorry, one last thing to her question. If acne prone, is it really okay to use rather than gel or water-based sunscreen? There are many things to say to that.
What's the question again?
If you're using a very thick inorganic mineral sunscreen, but you're acne prone, is that a problem? That's one. And two, should you instead use gel or water-based sunscreen? So I think with the first one, do you think inorganic sunscreens that tend to be thicker, titanium dioxide and zinc oxide, are they okay for acne-prone skin?
They're not acnegenic. They're a little bit too large to really irritate that follicular pore. So they're not comedogenic. I just finished a monograph on comedogenicity. And some of you may be using the tables from the old days of the rabbit ear assay, and then the ones that were generated out of that and then became tables that you can look into the internet. Please don't bother with those. Really,
They're
there are
really
many
old
more.
and disproven.
Those are old and disproven, correct? And the human studies
Are
on the compound materials that are made with perhaps some of the ingredients that were found to be comedogenic. But Dr. Drelos in her 2006 study showed that it doesn't equate. There is
Right.
no, they're incongruous.
So if you look at our live stream from last week, we tackled acne. It's in our IGTV here. You can watch. So a couple of things, right? Number one, those mineral sunscreens, the molecules are probably too big to penetrate and clog. Number two, a lot of the stuff that you see online about what is comedogenic and not is based on really old studies done on rabbit ears. And they've been disproven. Even just checking themselves against each other, the results were incongruent. And we have a blog post on vmvinskin.com that also goes into that. So short answer, a purely mineral, even thick sunscreen shouldn't clog pores or cause acne. And those are two different things. Something that can clog a pore doesn't necessarily produce acne because acne is an inflammation. So for acne, you need the comedone to happen, which is the plugged hair follicle. Then you also need irritation and inflammation. Okay. So with certain products, she always says it, and I'm going to repeat it again. Read the ingredients, right? In addition to known comedogens, and again, look at the sources for that. Should not be the rabbit ear sources, rabbit ear assays. It should be human trials. But in addition, look at the other stuff that's in there. If there are allergens, fragrances, dyes, preservatives are the most common ones, then that might irritate the pore and cause acne, and might be photoallergens and actually work against the hyperpigmentation that you're trying to avoid, right? And then in terms of gel and, quote, water-based sunscreens, unless this has changed, so sunscreen actives tend to mix best in an emulsion, in a cream. So when you put them in a gel, you have a couple of problems. Number one, or a spray. Number one, you're not sure if they're mixing in properly. Number two, they evaporate so quickly. So when you put them on the skin, you're not sure how much protection is actually being left. And in some countries, the FDA actually requires additional studies to prove that they're actually effective, precisely because you don't know what's getting on the skin, what's spreading on there, and what's staying
the
on there.
uniformity of each
There you
drop
go.
of it is not quite the same.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let me just clarify
Please.
with you, because my favorite for treating melasma is using those physical sunblocks with zinc oxide, titanium dioxide, and then I add something with iron oxide, like a makeup, as a layering.
Layer.
Okay. The thing, I teach even men to apply that barrier, and you know how men are about applying anything on their skin.
Some men.
So
some men.
So I teach them this. Remember, these are large molecules. So when you apply it on your skin, rub it in and really rub it into the skin. Don't worry about it. It won't go in at all. It stays on the surface because the molecules are big. They really are like a barrier. And so because of the fact that, as I told you, there's inflammation in many of these inflammatory hyperpigmentations, it's nice to, one of the things that occurs
hold
from
on.
inflammation is what we call, are we still in?
Yes, I think we're back. Sorry about that. Yes.
Okay, let me go back because that's a very important point. When you put a sunblock with physical sunblocks that are larger molecules, you rub it in very well into the skin until that whiteness really disappears. The molecules will be there, and one of the things it does is, as a sunscreen, it's a block. The other thing it does is that in any kind of an inflammation, there tends to eventually, over time, develop a barrier dysfunction. In other words, that stratum corneum becomes a little bit disrupted so that it's not able to retain the water inside, and therefore your skin becomes dry and flaky over time. That develops, So therefore, I like the fact that these zinc and titanium dioxide kind of products are both a sunscreen to not just UVB, but also to UVA and a bit of the visible light, all right? So therefore, that's a good sunscreen. It's broad spectrum. The other thing is that it helps repair that barrier layer so that you're not so prone to accepting all the chemicals that are there in the air that give you the photosensitivity or the photoallergy or photoirritation of your skin.
I'm going to jump in because we have so many questions coming in on Facebook and Instagram. So very quickly, I didn't want to miss this. not all pigmentation comes from the sun,
That's
correct?
right.
So, can you share with us? She's spoken to me about very interesting cases of clothing contact dermatitis, which can manifest as itching, but also dark patterns in the body.
That's right.
Could you?
It's an amazing. It only became something that I was very interested in the past couple of years. When we doctors examine a patient as a dermatologist, I have been taught that you must examine not just the face, for instance, if the problem is there, but actually ask the patient to strip very nicely and,
I hope so.
and take a good look at the rest of the skin. And I was always surprised to see your skin is kind of discolored. And yeah, I thought that was part of aging, is usually the answer. And I take a look and I see that at the armpit area, especially at the area around it, not so much the vault, but around it, there's discoloration. Look a little bit further, the upper back, and then to the waistline, and then the important part. And I say,
The
do you
groin.
mind if I take a look at your groin and there's this pattern of hyperpigmentation, discoloration in the groin area, in the
Where the
gluteal,
elastics,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
So this is another form, really almost like melasma. Melasma, as I told you earlier, is very subtle. It develops over time, very slowly and gradually, without any itching most of the time. It just appears. It's the same thing with pigmented contact dermatitis, is what it's called. There is no inflammation, much that is obvious, but there is discoloration that gradually over time happens in the waistband area, here, maybe even on the ankles, And I've
Behind
done
the knees, diba the knees
Right.
from the jeans.
Right.
Indigo and other stuff in jeans and
Right.
jeggings.
Yes.
Nako.
So I do a patch testing on these people, and lo and behold, we've found that there are, in fact, a number of things, especially dyes, preservatives from laundry soap, for instance, that are the cause for the gradual hyperpigmentation in covered areas of the body. And this occurs in any color of your skin.
Right. So I'm going to back up a bit and then we're
Pigmented
going to...
contact derm.
Right. And we're going to get through a lot of the questions that are coming in from Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for your questions. I will muscle through this and get through as many of them as we can. So number one, again, for people who are just joining us, like most things of the skin, inflammation is a big part of this, either as an originator or an exacerbator. It makes it worse. So a big thing always is prevention, prevention, prevention. If you're not sure what might be causing the hyperpigmentation, typical culprits are sun, even through the window. Someone had asked earlier also on our sunscreens what indicates the UVA factor, and it's the PFA. But so it's UVA, but also blue light from your tablets. You don't really open your tablet, do you? Anyway, blue light from your phone or computer. For very photosensitive people, it's even TV screens and monitors. So those are typical culprits. Also typical culprits are fragrance, dyes, preservatives. Many allergens are also photoallergens. So even if you're using a very good treatment for hyperpigmentation, look at the ingredients list, because if there are allergens, they might be photoallergens. Typical treatments for melasma and hyperpigmentation include hydroquinone, thank you so much.
But there are many new others.
There are many others. There's kojic acid.
Tranexamic acid is
There's
taken
a lot of
internally now.
stuff. But again, look at what else is in that formulation. When using things that are hardcore, like hydroquinone or steroids, note that that's not for forever use. Those things can backfire and cause other problems that are of bigger concern.
I just want to stress that there are so many
Okay.
products out there now for melasma and hyperpigmentation. The most important thing, other than those drugs, is really to prevent it. And that
Prevention,
is with the sunscreen and
prevention.
avoidance of the chemicals that stimulate it. Let me also give you some other thing about...
Questions.
Huh? There's
So
another
many
question?
questions.
Okay,
Like 3 million.
a question.
Okay, so Jen Sherwin, who asked on Facebook about acne, I don't know if you caught it earlier. We did an acne live last week. It's on Instagram and our IGTV. I suggest you look at that. For Rod Kanke, I've been using topical tretinoin cream for 10 years now, and sometimes I forget to use sunblock. Can tretinoin cause melasma or pigmentation? And can makeup base sunblock be a good replacement for sunscreen? So,
Good question.
yeah, well, go nuts.
Okay. The retinoin is, like we talked about earlier, it's a fantastic chemical. It's a gold standard. But the thing about it is that if you've been continually using it for many years, if you overuse it, it can disrupt that barrier also because it does remove part of that stratum corneum. And so you have to be more careful. If there are times that you're exposed to so many chemicals in the air and you will be irritated by that, the addition of retinoic acid used every day and twice a day yet will not be so good for you. You have to dampen it a little bit.
And I found the bigger concern in his question was,
Yes.
I forget to wear sunscreen. No. No. Forget the retinoin sometimes. Don't forget the sunscreen.
For a double effect. Remember
Yeah.
what I said? It blocks, the sunscreen will block off the UVA, UVB. If you're lucky, it blocks off the visible light as well. But in addition, it also protects the barrier. The barrier.
Barrier. Prevention. The third part of that question was, can makeup base replace sunscreen if it's also a sunscreen, not alone? So here's the funny thing about makeup bases. Some of them do have SPF, but you have to check for UVA protection as well in your makeup base. And ideally also visible light protection. But she keeps going on, and I completely agree, no? Layering is such a good idea. So if you can do sunscreen and then a makeup base, and then
Because
even
of
a
that.
powder, even better. Yeah. Someone else was asking for BB cream has SPF. It does. SPF 30, and it's indoor and outdoor, yes. Okay.
The iron oxide in those colored products is what adds on to your zinc and titanium, by the way. So yes, you layer on these colors, this powder, the thing on top of it, and it really adds up the protection.
If you walk away with nothing else, folks, it's prevention, sunscreen, and layer.
There you go.
Quickly, just a nice shout out to Adele. Good morning, Doc. I'm one of your subjects sa inyong research study on psoriasis and VCO back in 2007. So
Okay.
hello. Okay.
Hello.
Doctora, is it true? This is from Anne on Facebook that turmeric helps reduce melasma.
It's an antioxidant. Remember, we talked about inflammation. Therefore, it's an antioxidant. You're talking about a turmeric taken internally, right?
Let's assume both.
If it's applied on the skin, it does make the skin look yellow. So I wouldn't apply it on the skin, especially on the face.
We wanted to experiment with that, but we're still in the experimentation stage because
There
it's
is
yellow.
turmeric, which is white, by the way. That's the one that we'll probably be working on.
Maybe. So taking turmeric internally, if I am going to take a stab at this, because it's an anti-inflammatory, it'll probably help in that regard, reduce inflammation. Right. By the way, for all of this, because everything's so linked to inflammation, anti-inflammatory diet helps you here too, right? So the closest thing I like, just to shortcut it, is look at a Mediterranean diet. Right. Fresh fruits and vegetables, lots of fish, less red meat and dairy and stuff like that. No whites, no white bread, no
Organic.
white pasta, white rice. Go for brown rice or red rice, and no junk food. And sleep 7 to 8 hours. And
as organic as possible.
And talk to a therapist if you need to, or get help, because mental health is so crucial to inflammation. Meditate. Deepak Chopra app or Insight Timer app, phenomenal. Okay, I want to ask, Good morning. Because of the frequent use of masks, is it prudent not to apply moisturizers and sunscreen in the mask-covered area? I notice that I get more acne nowadays in the mask-covered area of the face. And people, I'm sure, are also getting pigmentation concerns from the masks. The PPEs is what we're talking about.
Some people get acne, some people get irritated by it, and some people get rashes, actually, and dryness and roughness of the skin over time by using the mask. The reason for that is the manufacturers actually put some kind of an antiseptic or antibiotic on the blue part of the mask. The inner part will probably absorb or get some of that in, or they may even have a little bit of chemical as well. The important thing about those chemicals is that if it's chlorine based, for instance, chlorine is what we call one of the halogens. There is such a thing as halogen acne. And among the things that produce halogen acne, for instance, is perioral acne from the fluoride in your toothpaste.
That's right.
Because fluoride is another halogen. So the fluoride in the toothpaste can produce that perioral acne. The chlorine in the soap, the chlorine in that mask may be an irritant as well as a photoallergen, as well as an acnegen. So what I sometimes tell people, including myself, because I'm very sensitive to those things, I get a handkerchief.
That's right.
And I soak it in bottled water overnight, put it in the refrigerator so it's nice and cold. And I'll place a layer of coconut oil around here and then put that on. And I seem to be okay. Look at my skin. It's pretty good.
It's fantastic. Okay, so here's the thing about PPEs. They're necessary. Even if we're out of
Absolutely.
quarantine, wear a mask because it's important, okay?
That's right.
But we don't downplay the importance of PPE dermatitis. It is a growing concern. Health frontliners in particular, if you caught our live stream, if not, it's on IGTV. Again, we talk about VCO and monolaurin as antimicrobials. So switching or alternating with virgin coconut oil, monolaurin might help. We have an article on vmvinskin.com about some of the things that you can do to try to save your skin. You provide a little bit of a barrier between your skin and the PPE to minimize contact. So that can be VCO, as my mom said, virgin coconut oil, but maybe also the Armada, because it is a physical barrier between the skin and that contact.
Yes.
You know? In terms of acnegens or comedogens, again, check out vmvinskin.com and our IGTV from last week. We really go into what causes acnegens and comedogens, and prevention goes such a long way. So if you can avoid comedogens, but also irritants and allergens, that might really help. But if you want, DM us and we can see if we can get into stuff in a little more detail. One more question here from Zaikik. I can't pronounce that. I'm sorry. Good morning. Are freckles a sign of melasma and hyperpigmentation?
Freckles can be genetic. You know, there are some people who develop this nevus of Ota or nevus, you know, devoid of hori, what we call. And they are just a tendency to develop pigmentation. You see them even in children already, right? Those are nevi, those are inherited things. But as you grow older and you develop freckling, okay, that may be from, again, photo exposure. So it could be a form of hyperpigmentation, actually, besides the nevi that we were talking about. So freckling can be that. And then as you even grow older yet, those freckles will grow. And that can be due to, especially in people with white skin, the freckling becomes much more obvious. And especially people also who have rosacea. It's a very interesting condition because if you tend to redden when you're out in the sun, as you grow older, maybe in your 30s and onwards, you begin to have this reddening on the face, and the skin all of a sudden becomes dry and tight and, you know, rough. So that's rosacea, and rosacea also can produce the acne we were talking about, plus it's very photosensitive.
Right.
So among the things people with rosacea will develop is that they redden and they also pigment.
Okay.
Right?
So freckles, also sunscreens, basically,
Yes.
right? So
So
again,
protection
everything.
again.
Anti-inflammatory.
Barrier and sunscreen.
Barrier, sunscreen, prevention. By the way, to underscore prevention, also look at your laundry soap.
Yes.
Because especially if you have that clothing contact dermatitis, that could be causing it, or underarm axillary darkening, that could be what it's from. And we have something for that, which I'll get into later when Doctora leaves. Okay, tretinoin we covered. Do we have a store in Taiwan? We have some products that are available through Menu, which is a nail salon in Taiwan. If y'all are watching in Taiwan, hello. From April, okay, we'll address that separately. Chronic urticaria from Pilar. I've noticed my urticaria is at bay, avoiding inflammatory foods. So yeah, basically anything anti-inflammatory that you can do
Where's
for
she
yourself
from?
is good. Pilar Zosa is, I'm guessing, from the Philippines.
Pilar, we have actually an ongoing study on what we call chronic spontaneous urticaria.
DM us here,
That
private
means
message.
a recurring urticaria that comes every now and then, you know, and plagues you. But there doesn't seem to be any cause. You've identified a number of things, but it isn't consistent, and over the months and years even, it just comes, and you may have eaten no shrimp or no, beef or no chicken, and it still comes. If you have that, you're interested.
Private message
Private
here
message.
or at VMV Skin Research
Yes.
Center and Clinics.
So we have a fantastic new drug that we're using for an international company. It's an amazing drug.
I gotta tell you, folks, clinical studies are great to be a part of because we're talking about late stage trials anyway, so they're
Yes.
safe. And what we're doing is just proving efficacy. And it's a great way to try some of the newer stuff on the market for free, basically.
And it's multinational already, this study that we're doing. It's fantastic.
Okay.
We get great results.
Okay, so we have some more. Oh my gosh. Some more. Oh, from Greenwich, Connecticut. Pila.
Hi.
Sosa. Okay, so we'll see if there's a similar study near where you are. I know Greenwich, Connecticut. I used to spend almost every weekend there because my best friend used to live there. Funny, small world. Okay, I'll do a quick summary here and then I will let her go because this lovely woman over here is constantly doing research. So she has calls, she has a paper she's working on, she has a study she's working on. So I'll do a quick summary with her here. And when she goes, I'll talk a little bit more about VMV products again, and I'll answer some of your questions about VMV in particular.
Okay, thank you for releasing me.
So in summary again, like almost everything really in health and in life, it's prevention, prevention, prevention is your best friend. For hyperpigmentation, oh shoot, I meant to cover a little bit hypopigmentation, vitiligo, and I keep blanking on, when you have no melanocytes or they don't produce anymore. What's
Right.
albinism?
Albinism.
Albinism, sorry. So can you tell us a bit about vitiligo and
Yeah, vitiligo is a loss of pigment that's genetic, and what happens is just the skin all of a sudden becomes paper white, and it
Stops
appears in
producing
various-
pigment.
Stops producing pigment.
right?
However, there are hypopigmentations that you can do something about, and the hypopigmentations can be post-inflammatory as well. It can be post-contact dermatitis as well. And remember, lots of people nowadays have this little bit of steroid cream in their armamentarium. And whenever they itch, they'll put it on. They'll do that. One of the side effects of chronic recurring use of steroids is that it loses its barrier. It becomes thin. It loses its pigment. And you get this whitening of the skin. One look at the patient and say, okay, stop using your steroids, okay? Because there's a halo of loss
Yeah.
of pigmentation in spots.
Okay.
So avoid steroids
Right.
used chronically over time.
I have a cool cuento I want to share with you. Cool story I would like to share with you for those in the States. Is she had a patient once who had come being diagnosed with vitiligo.
Yes.
And my mom was looking at her going, really? Because it was just here. It was almost like an owl type of effect, right?
Yes.
And she kept going, are you sure? Did they do a biopsy? What was this? So she said, yeah, it's vitiligo. I've been treated for years, whatever. So she goes, if you don't mind, can we do a patch test to just see? So they did a patch test and her results were wildly reactive to rubber, right?
She was a swimmer.
So then she asked, what is it that you do when she's a swimmer? And she's like, do you wear goggles? Yeah. Oh. So again, in summary, and I will let her go now, prevention, folks. You might be using something, gardening, disinfectants, PPEs, goggles, that are causing pigmentation problems. If you are looking at your entire arsenal, laundry soap, shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, makeup, everything that you're using, look at the ingredients to try to make sure you don't see any allergens, because many allergens are also photoallergens. Those common ones, dyes, preservatives, fragrance. Definitely avoid the sun. Definitely wear sunscreen indoors and out. You definitely want your sunscreen to be tested for UVB, but also UVA and visible light, which includes blue light. Layering is a great idea. So sunscreen, makeup base, powder, etc. And anything that you can do for anti-inflammation is a good thing. No junk food, good sleep, mental health, proper food, the Mediterranean diet. And for treatments, you have a lot of choices. Antioxidants, kojic acid,
Azelaic acid.
azelaic acid, even hydroquinone and steroids. But again, those things are not for everyday long-term use because they
Should
can
be under a
backfire.
doctor's
And always under a doctor's care. And if it's stubborn, go see a dermatologist, especially because it might be something that you're not identifying. Could be clothing contact dermatitis. You might need a photoallergen to figure it out. There you go.
Yeah.
So,
Before I go,
yes, ma'am.
most important thing is really it is your skin, and people see this every day, and it's one of the things. Almost 50% of people with brownish skin to darker skin, almost 50% had terrible quality of life because of the melasma that they have. This has been shown in a lot of studies. So the important thing is invest on your skin. Go see a proper dermatologist,
Yes.
and hopefully they will be able to do a patch test. They'll recommend a patch test and have it done. It may be on the expensive side, but I can tell you it is really worth its weight in gold. The second thing I'd like to do before I leave is that there's one other thing that you can avoid to prevent these discolorations. You know what it is? Aromatherapy.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody likes the little bit of smell over there.
Or even burning in your room, huh?
Or burning in the room or spraying to get that scent there.
Lots of allergens and
Those are
photoallergens.
very photoallergenic. I've seen so many of them, including a patient I had to hospitalize in a dark room to get rid of his photoallergy in 3 weeks.
Okay.
That was. Then he went away, 100% clear. He was so proud of himself. I was walking in completely in white because he was allergic to dye, with a hat on this time. He really looked terrific.
Okay, so again,
But
prevention.
then he developed, he said, why am I breaking out in certain areas? So you know what it was from? At night, his wife would, and he would.
Aromatherapy. Okay, one last thing. For vitiligo and for albinism, do see a doctor, dermatologist. There are some treatments that are being looked at, but you need to be with a dermatologist
Properly
for
done.
that. Okay, I will let you
Okay.
go. I love you. Mwah. Thank you, thank you. I'll stay with you guys for a little bit and address some of the VMB specific concerns. Can you help getting up?
Yes.
There, perfect.
And I get away.
I trap her. When I have her, I trap her to make sure she doesn't go anywhere.
My tea is here.
Okay, hold on. So, quickly, guys, again, prevention. At VMV, we really talk about this through Essence shampoo and conditioner, all of our makeup. Particularly, if you know you have a dye allergy, look for our dye-free shades. See a dermatologist in case you need a photoallergen. The products that we make for hyperpigmentation in particular are from the Illuminance line. So that would be the cleanser, the toner, the cream, sunscreen. And we also make ID, and we recommend ID before your Illuminance for acne spots in particular. We've got a lot of regimens, and some of them are cool because they combine actives from different lines on vmvinskin.com. That's also where you can find a lot of this stuff in our blog and in IGTV. And then for all you wonderful people who joined us today, if you visit our websites and enter VMV Live June 12, that's VMVLIVEJUN 12, VMV Live June 12, you get 20% off the Illuminates line this weekend, June 12 to 14. The other stuff that's happening is a sale on 1635, my personal favorite cleanser, and ID products, and mascara is something like 50% off. We will be doing live streams like this every week for as long as I can get her at 9 a.m. Friday in the Philippines and 9 p.m. Thursday night in the United States, EST, Eastern Standard Time. And due to lots of requests for contact dermatitis and patch testing, we lost that video, so we couldn't save it. We'll be doing it again next week. So definitely let us know your questions about contact dermatitis and patch testing. And if you'd like a teleconsultation with my mother or other dermatologists that we work with at VMV, you can send us a DM here or a private message on Facebook, and we can help you make that happen. Remember, you can send us your patch test results, and we can customize recommendations based on your particular patch test results. Don't forget to subscribe to receive emails on our website. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, etc., etc. And I'm also happy to talk to folks on Instagram at Laura@VMV. And that's pretty much it, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. And in the Philippines, maligayang araw ng kalayaan. Have a wonderful holiday. And to our friends in the United States, safety, big, big hugs and well wishes. And yes, to the person who just shot out a question, we are in Canada. Principal Brands is our distributor there, so you can find us all over the world. So yeah, thank you guys, and we'll see you next week. See ya.